So I called it, how can NLP enhance this burn-on flames of resilience and post-traumatic growth? What I would like to introduce, I don't think I have to introduce much the concept of resilience, so I will just briefly say a few more words about it, but maybe share a little more about PTG, which is not so well known. It is a concept which has been researched a lot in the last decades, post-traumatic growth. And I would also like to explore the correlation between those concepts and see how maybe we can get some ideas how to approach it in our working with people in our clinical practice. So resilience, we could say it's growth despite adversity. And I think the best description of resilience are the images. We had this roly-poly, I think, yeah? Roly-poly, which you can, bend and it still bounces back, or this ball, this rubber ball, and you can press it and squeeze it and it gets back into form. So basically that's resilience. And we can use many words. We have some definitions. It's how to live through or navigate through stress, and again, come out with high self-esteem, and it's also an active process. It is not something static. It's a process of development which has a lot to do, of course, with the context, with the motivation, and so on. So there are many factors. Some of them are the positive attitude, it's an optimism, it is the ability to see failure as a form of feedback, and also how to cope with emotions, how to deal with emotional states. And these are just a few images showing us. And I think in our work with clients, also in NLP and NLPt, a huge part of our work is building resilience. Because we say we're focusing from the beginning on the resources, helping people in many ways strengthen the resources, which would be equivalent to building resilience. And just a few words, you can read it. It's about just an idea how, in general, people work on building resilience, be it in schools, in teams, in business, and so on. So it's about really helping people become aware of the resources and strengthen them as a basic formula. Now, PTG, post-traumatic growth. It has been defined by Lawrence Calhoun and Richard Tedeschi, and researched quite a lot, defined as positive psychological change as a result with very, very difficult life circumstances, traumas. And when we say traumas, many things can be a trauma. I think the last case examples were a great example. Those were traumas. It wasn't a one-time effect. But those people were really traumatizing themselves by their beliefs and values, and then the behavior which was a result of those. So the 5 general areas of growth they defined was this, a sense of new opportunities which they did not see before. So we would say their map became richer and broader. There was a change in relationships with people. So back to Peter's question, relationships became much more important, intimacy, being close to others, and also empathy. The ability to really tune in to people who are maybe also in a difficult life situation, more empathy. Then an increased strength of feeling of strength. Of course, if I could live through that, I can do anything. And which gave them a feeling, a belief in their own strength. A greater appreciation for life in general. That's what we oftentimes have. Maybe you also experience it. I have on a very small basis, let's say I'm ill, and then the day I feel better, everything seems so wonderful. Being able to stand up, to walk, to enjoy the coffee or whatever. So here they said they were very much able to enjoy life and the little things which make it so valuable. and also a deepening of spiritual life. Spiritual life can be religious, doesn't have to be religious. It's just this feeling there is something more to being a person, to being human, and it can be very different. So one example, and I have heard very many, which for people who are not maybe hadn't had experience in that area may sound odd, but many people will say after, let's say, having cancer, that was the best thing that happened to me. I even know one lady, or maybe there are, I'm sure, more, who said she was really in a terminal phase. And all her life she had been very active, very burnt out, and she continuously, she said, this is the best time in my life. I don't care if I die, but I can be myself. There's no pressure. I don't have to be the way others expect me to be. And also again this, I really enjoy life now. I see the beauty, the perception is changed. I can even see the colors more clearly than before. Back to vision, as you said. Here the vision seems to open up. And very often what people will say. So what I found interesting was when they examined the connection, correlation between post-traumatic growth and resilience. There are many studies. This is just an example. So there were some factors of growth had a positive connection with resilience, and some had a negative. So here in this study, they found that there was a positive correlation between the post-traumatic stress disorder, meaning those people who, due to the trauma or stress, really had this breakdown and were suffering a lot, and that those people really were able to grow based on that experience. So the more, you could simplify it, the more pain they endured, the more they could grow. The idea is not new. We have it throughout history, from the ancient times, the Greek tragedies. People become heroes because of adversities. There was a positive correlation between resilience and post-traumatic growth in the areas of personal strength and new possibilities, which makes sense when we look how we define resilience. So being stronger, being more resilient, seeing different ways, that's the ways we build resilience. And there was a negative correlation between resilience and the post-traumatic stress disorder, which makes sense, of course. The more people are resilient, the less they will suffer out of stress, they will be able to cope more. But this is just one more example, and there are many more such studies where they really saw there is a negative correlation between resilience and post-traumatic growth. So the more resilient people were, the growth, they were able to adapt, to cope, but this area of growth was not so evident, and you could see it in the research. And again, the more stress, so this is, I think, a better way to emphasize it. And the question, do we have to hit rock bottom in order to grow? What I'm not saying, definitely, is that we sit in life and wait for something terrible to happen. Great, now I'll really experience a tragedy, so I'll grow. Of course we will. What I want to emphasize, when it happens, and such people come to us, that we just recognize, it's difficult, but there is a seed, there is a potential for growth. And that's the important thing. And I think the way we work with them is a little bit different. That's what I'd like to do. Another example, would be the work of Dr. Lisa Miller. She's a clinical psychologist, a researcher, works at the Columbia University, and has the first Ivy League, which is very high level program, university program, in spirituality and psychology. So Lisa's story was she very much wanted to have a child at a certain point in her life with her husband. And they were not able, she was not able to conceive. So she tried again and was getting more and more depressed and focused on it. And there was a certain point where she really was in a bad state, and what she said is then she had this experience, she said, for her was very spiritual, having an inner voice. But it was like an inner presence coming coming to surface in her, giving her certain guidelines, and so she started listening to this inner voice. And at the end, to make a very long story short, because this is not the topic, she first adopted a child, found, she said, the ideal child, a little boy, and on that very evening, when they were called, her husband and herself, and they were told, there is a child for you, a little boy, on the other side of the globe, but this is, for whatever reasons, this will be your child. That very night, she naturally conceived. And then she said, my children are spiritual twins, because she naturally conceived a little girl and had this boy. So what Lisa says is depression can be an illness, and it can be also the portal to our development. She said it's like a door with two sides. One side is illness, but if I open the door and go through, then it is growth or development. Being a researcher, okay, this is one more example, and we have many, many more, in the world of famous artists. Van Gogh was one tragic example. Tragic if we see it as tragic that he took his own life because he wasn't able to bear the pain, but we have many such archetypes, we could say, in history where people believe they need to suffer a lot in order to produce great art. And I think it's still present to some extent, this belief I think you mentioned. I have to suffer only then. So it's not new. So what they did, as Lisa Miller has said, is working on the university, so she had a good opportunity to do research. It was a 25-year-old longitudinal study. And they had families with high-risk children, meaning depression was running for generations in the family. And the children were also, in one group, they were depressed themselves. So they were doing neuroimaging of the brain, and they could see a thinning of the cortex in certain regions of the brain. So you could see the cortex became very thin, and they connected it to this depressed state and also this genetic influence of their families having depression. And they took also another group of similar adults who were also high risk, meaning they had the same familial background of their parents, grandparents being depressive, but for whom spirituality was very important in their lives. And not for a short time, but for a very long time. And what they found, they had thicker cortices in the same region where the others had thinner cortices. And so the conclusion, there are of course many factors in the research, but the conclusion was that they had a 90% less risk of becoming depressive, regardless of their maybe genetic or family influences, than those in the first group. So this is one image just showing it. It's published online, so it's easy to get this study, and this red and yellow are showing all these regions where there was a positive correlation between their spiritual importance and thickness. This is one, as I mentioned, spirituality can be defined in many ways. I like to adopt this definition by Gregory Bateson because it's somehow going along the line also of the work of Robert Dilts talking about the field mind. And this is also what Bateson says, that our mind is a part of a larger mind, and we are connected with this larger mind. We're just a subsystem of this larger mind, which some people maybe, that's what they call God. In NLP, we mostly will use the word unconscious, and it sort of covers it, inner guidance from an unconscious mind. Another area where they also find this changes, again, it seems that this cortical thickness in certain areas is connected with resilience. So also maybe you came across such studies of people who meditate, mindfulness, another word for it. They had also, you could see in the brain for those, of course, who were doing it a long time, thickening of ourselves. So personally, putting it together, this idea, let me see what comes next. Okay. I'll say it a little later, so just to use the logical levels, I would say resilience we are building often on the level of behaviors and capabilities, and to some extent the beliefs and values, of course. And the post-traumatic growth is more identity and spirituality. It's not so strictly divided, but basically it's more about that. So, back to my title, what do I mean by quick fix paradigm? I think you came across such announcement, you do one day course and you have a direct influence to manifest everything you want in your life, for instance. We have it at least in many. Also in NLP, I would say this idea we can very quickly change everything. Maybe. The question is just what are the effects of it. So do we want to be the magician who just waves the wand and everything is cured? Also resilience, is it building an armor? Because that's not the kind of resilience which is really helpful. Then we can't move and we don't see who is beneath the armor. It just is very stable, of course. But it's not that kind of resilience. So for me, personally, working with clients, along with building resilience, offering them some ideas about mindfulness is very important, because I think then we have both. Then we're adding to the resilience, also increasing the sensitivity and the awareness. So I guess that will then also go more in the direction of growth. So the so-called quick fix solutions when it comes to symptoms. It's a lot away from, let's remove. What I mean by this, let me remove your phobia, and I don't have to know anything about you, your background, your personal, I can remove it. So basically, it's mainly focusing on the symptoms. It's not having enough information to understand the symptoms. As we saw, and with perfect examples in the case studies, there was a lot of important information. If we don't understand it, I'm thinking also of another example, a client who had a phobia. The phobia was of open space, So she was married, she was successful in her career, had 3 children, had a good life in many ways, and she had a phobia. So just removing this phobia would probably have created a lot of imbalance, because later what we discovered, she had a very unintegrated inner part. Remember Birgit's inner team? With this lady, it was an inner part of her who was reckless, who was adventurous. She was like that in her teenage years. She didn't care about others. She was really passionate about exploring the world on her own. For some reason, that part was suppressed. And now, the phobia was taken care of. The symptom was keeping that part away, so she could have this balanced life. And just removing the symptom. Do you have Cesar Millan here? Do you know him? Dog whisperer? Yes, some of you know. Another metaphor, he works with dogs, so if you have a pack of dogs, you know who is the leader, so they're well balanced, and you have one dog who is in a cage. And this dog is quite wild and different from the pack. And there comes an NLP magician or some other method, has a key, opens. And this wild dog leaps in the middle of the pack, and it's total chaos. So the idea would be first to tame the dog, to get to know him, to create contact with, and then slowly bring him out so he can join the rest of the team of dogs or my inner team in a balanced way. And then he will enrich our experience because he will bring new energy, which is good. And of course, I may then use the, if necessary, phobia technique, but not before. The idea is just, when. We have great tools, just don't use them too early. So the danger is, yes, the intervention may be in this moment very pleasurable, it's quick, but this I like the Gestalt word organic growth. This unique growth will then be blocked. On a level of attitudes and values, what I think is not helpful if we're coming sort of from a one-up position. I'm here to help you. So you're somehow more helpless and I will help you than I'm the rescuer. Or I want to display my power. I have so many tools, I'm so great, I can so easily change you and your life. It's again this position, me doing something to you. So I would say what is helpful is somehow being on the same level and really knowing, yes, I have some knowledge, I have some experience, but you are the expert in your life. So it's about you. I fully trust your inner wisdom. I fully trust that you have the answers, and I'm here just to create the space and support you with my knowledge. And I will lead you only when necessary. I don't want to fascinate you. I don't want to impress you. I just am here, and when necessary, I have the tools. I can teach you. So one way to put it, too early removal of symptoms, don't throw away the baby with the bath water. Or as Carl Gustav Jung once said, if you remove the pain too quickly, you might remove part of your soul with the pain. This idea is first understanding this. Now some possible implications for psychotherapeutic practice, and it's a thin line. When is it coaching, when counseling, when psychotherapy? In some cases it's very clear, depends on the severity of the problem, but when we work with people, it's very similar, I would say. So, and this will probably be also, for those of you who did NLP, you will recognize it easily as the approach. And it's interesting because I took this from the post-traumatic growth book from Richard Tedeschi and Calhoun. So basically they came up with the same ideas. Just respect and work within the client's framework. Tolerance for benign illusions means we have a tendency as people, if we have a solid, let's say, self-esteem, to see ourselves a little better than we are, than the majority would perceive us. A little smarter, a little friendlier, a little, and it seems to be good, as long as it's really, because it motivates us to be even better. And also we'll work with the perspective of the client, of course, except if they have really some psychotic ideas, delusions, or behavior that we would consider very unethical. Right? We would question that. So again, being very present, being willing to hold the space, to listen to the stories, even if they're very difficult. Which is the reason why we also, if we are working in that field, first need a lot of personal self-development. To explore it, how will it affect me, all these issues, life issues like life, death, and such things. First to explore them on a personal basis before we enter such a field. Also to feel privileged to be on the journey with a survivor. Personally, I have a few times maybe really experienced it, and I had tears in my eyes because this power of a person suddenly who was in such a bad state, and suddenly something happened, and this person was became very different, having new ideas, and so I think that's what they meant. It's really beautiful to see it, and amazing. Do not encourage too much emotional control. It's good that we have control, but if we create this armor, then the growth won't happen, then we are not flexible anymore. So we become rigid. This is again leading to a form of disbalance. So as the Buddha is saying, we are a lot into doing in NLP, but it's not always. Don't always do something, just sit here and be. Again, talking about mostly if people have difficult stories, so it's different. If people are very well, in a good state, very stable, with lots of resources, we work differently. Then we will teach them lots of techniques and methods, and they can explore new possibilities. So we have both. So what, avoiding this sentence, which sometimes we often hear, you have all the resources, you can do anything you want. Well, not really. Maybe on some meta level, but we have our limitations based on our personal history, so yes, with time we might also get to a point where we can do most things, but you just need to see differently. What comes to my mind as an example is, again, I'm working also in the area of bereavement, so I have been working with a few women, it just happened to be women who had lost their children. And one of those women is especially now coming to my mind. She was a passionately successful woman, a researcher, really well known. She lost her only son. She was equally passionate in her pain. And I remember her saying, my womb is screaming day and night because it has lost its baby. It can't be. I don't accept a world where this can happen. So, reframing, teaching her to see things differently, I wouldn't have done it. Of course, she could have. Maybe trained her mind to just focus on the good things with her son, to, however, change her way of thinking. But what happens with the womb? Then it would have been sort of even more suppressed in the body. And what already Freud was saying, if you don't go through bereavement, a few years later, very often there's a somatic illness. So, there are cases where the approach is different. Here, it would be more creating a safe and comfortable place. So for me, again, back to this idea of field, because it fits so well, at least to my way of thinking. Being together with a person through rapport, it's like a field is created. So if someone is in such pain, I can hold the space for that person, not by saying anything necessarily. But as with this woman, I could see her power. She couldn't see it at that moment. I knew that she would heal. She didn't know. You get the idea? It's sort of, I was helping her by seeing her that way, because she was not in contact with her resources. And I didn't have to say it. It was more on this somatic level of connection and this, sometimes you could say, relational field. And then the idea would be slowly observed. And when the first signs come, then pick them up, emphasize them. When she says, maybe for the first time, well, there was a moment where I felt some peace. Tell me more. Show me the peace. Feel it. How is it then? When it comes from her, then, and be with her. So these would be some ideas, maybe what I wanted to share with you. This distinction between resilience, post-traumatic growth, and that it depends on life, I would say. So we cannot sometimes choose if something terrible happens, it's not because we chose it, it happens. So then the good thing is to know growth is possible, and the way to work would be more these ways, being present, being with the person slowly. And of course there is resilience then as another way of helping people to go through life in a way that stress will not influence them in a negative way, and they will also grow. And as I said, I would personally add some aspects like mindfulness, so to keep this resilience also emotionally sensitive and open, for it not to become rigid. And if we could see our brains sort of show it also. So I think this was what I wanted to share with you.